The silence was the first thing that hit me. Not the quiet of an empty house, but the deafening, hollow silence where a life used to be. I stood in the doorway of my son Leo's room. The bed was made, but his favorite stuffed dinosaur Rexy was gone. The little blue backpack he took everywhere was missing from its hook. A cold dread, heavy and suffocating, started to creep up my spine. I called her name. Sarah? Nothing. I walked through the small house we'd made a home. Her closet was half empty. Her toiletries were gone from the bathroom sink. It was real. This was happening. My heart hammered against my ribs. A frantic drumbeat of panic. I pulled out my phone, my thumb shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. I called her. It went straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. A third time. Voicemail. Then I called her sister Jessica. Straight to voicemail. I sank onto the edge of my own unmade bed. The room spinning. We'd had an argument the night before. It wasn't a bad one, not by our standards. Just the usual friction of two tired people trying to raise a child and pay the bills. I thought we'd gone to bed angry but would wake up and fix it, like we always did. I never imagined waking up to this. My mind raced, trying to piece it together. There had to be a reason, a note, something. I searched the kitchen counter, the coffee table, our bedroom. Nothing. Just the ghost of a life we shared hours ago. I was a father without a son. A husband without a wife. I was just a man in an empty house. For 2 days I lived in that crushing silence. I called every friend we had. No one had heard from her. I filed a missing persons report, but the police were blunt. She's an adult, sir. She's allowed to leave. She took your son, which is a civil matter, not a criminal one. You need a lawyer. A lawyer. The word felt foreign and cold. We were a family. We didn't need lawyers. On the third day my phone finally rang. It was her. I answered so fast I nearly dropped the phone. Sarah? Where are you? Is Leo okay? What is happening? The words tumbled out, a waterfall of fear and confusion. Her voice was ice, a stranger's voice. We're fine, Mark. We're with Jessica. I need some space. Space? I choked out the word. You took our son Sarah. You disappeared for 3 days and you call it needing space. Bring Leo home. No, she said, her voice flat and final. Leo is staying with me. It's better for him right now. I'll be in touch about you seeing him. Don't call me again. My lawyer will contact you. And then she hung up. The line went dead, but I held the phone to my ear for a long time, listening to the dial tone. Lawyer. She had a lawyer. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. This was a plan. While I was at work, playing with our son, making dinner, she was planning to rip my world apart. The sadness that had been drowning me began to curdle, hardening into something else. Something hot and sharp, anger. A week later, a man in a cheap suit knocked on my door and handed me an envelope. It was a petition for divorce and an emergency motion for sole custody of our son Leo. I sat at my kitchen table and read the words, each one a separate, deliberate stab to the heart. The documents were filled with lies. Vicious, twisted lies. She claimed I was an unstable and angry man. That I had a drinking problem. That I was emotionally neglectful of our son. She painted a picture of a monster. A man I didn't recognize. Every argument we ever had was twisted into an example of my abusive tendencies. My long hours at my accounting job weren't to provide for my family. They were proof of my neglect. The beer I had after a long day wasn't a simple pleasure. It was the sign of a spiraling addiction. Her sister Jessica had provided a sworn statement backing up every single lie. Jessica, who had eaten at our table 100 times. Jessica, who I'd helped move into her apartment. Jessica, who Leo called to Jess. My lawyer, a kind but brutally honest man, named Mr. Harrison, laid it all out for me. Mark, this is a classic move. It's called painting a narrative. Right now, in the court's eyes, you are who she says you are. It's your job to prove otherwise. And it's going to be an uphill battle. They have a head start. The court granted her temporary custody based on her claims. I was allowed one supervised visit a week, for 1 hour, at a sterile government facility. The first time I saw Leo, my soul broke. He ran to me, wrapping his small arms around my legs. Daddy, I missed you. I knelt down and held him so tight I was afraid he'd pop. I breathed in the smell of his hair, trying to memorize it. A stern-faced woman watched us from the corner of the room, a clipboard in her hand. "Why can't I come home, Daddy?" he asked, his big brown eyes filled with confusion. "We're just working some things out, buddy," I said, my voice thick. "Mommy and I are. Auntie Jess says your house is messy now," he said so innocently. "She says you don't know how to cook dinner." And that's when the first piece of the puzzle clicked into place. This wasn't just Sarah. This was Jessica. Jessica had always been a little too involved, a little too critical. I'd always brushed it off as a protective older sister. Now I saw it for what it was. She was the architect of this whole nightmare. Sarah was the puppet, and Jessica was pulling the strings. I spent my 1 hour with Leo playing with cheap plastic blocks on a worn-out rug, all under the cold gaze of the supervisor. When the hour was up, he cried. He clung to me, begging me not to leave. The supervisor had to gently peel his little hands off my shirt. I walked out of that building, got into my car, and I didn't just cry. I roared. An animal sound of pure helpless rage and grief. That night, something inside me shifted. The grief and the anger were still there, but a third thing was born. Determination. A cold, quiet resolve. They thought I was a monster. They wanted to take my son. They had started a war based on lies. Fine, I would end it with the truth. But not just the truth. I needed undeniable, irrefutable proof that would not just win me my son back, but would expose them for who they really were. My revenge wouldn't be loud or violent. I was an accountant. My weapons were numbers, details and patterns. My battlefield would be the one they chose. The legal system. And I would be meticulous. I started with the past. I spent every night after work combing through years of our shared life. I went through old bank statements, credit card bills, emails, text messages. I was looking for a crack in their story. A single loose thread I could pull. For weeks, I found nothing but memories of a happy life, which was its own kind of torture. Pictures of Leo's first steps. Receipts from our anniversary dinners. But I kept digging, my exhaustion fueled by black coffee and the image of Leo's crying face. Then I found it. A single charge on a secondary credit card from 4 months ago. A card Sarah rarely used. It was a 1-hour consultation fee with a top-tier, notoriously aggressive divorce attorney. 4 months ago, long before our last argument. Long before she claimed I had become unstable. The lie had a starting point. This wasn't a reaction to my behavior. It was a premeditated attack. I felt a grim satisfaction. This was the first brick in my wall of evidence. Next I turned my attention to Jessica. She was the ghost in the machine. I needed to understand her motive. I remembered idle conversations. Throwaway comments I'd dismissed at the time. Jessica had gone through a bitter divorce a few years back. She'd lost everything. She was always complaining about being broke. Always making passive-aggressive remarks about our home, our car, the vacations we took. It wasn't just protectiveness. It was envy. A deep rotting jealousy. I knew Sarah and Jessica were close, so I started thinking about their shared digital life. Did they have a shared photo album? A cloud account? I remembered Sarah setting up a family cloud drive years ago to share pictures of Leo with her parents. I had the password written down in an old notebook. I hadn't thought about it in years. My heart pounded as I logged in. It was mostly what I expected. Thousands of photos of Leo family gatherings. Vacations. But there was one folder I didn't recognize. It was titled Jay's Legal Docs. My blood ran cold. I clicked on it. It was a goldmine. It wasn't just about my case. It was Jessica's old divorce papers. Her financial settlements. Her failed appeals. But buried within it were documents related to me. There were drafts of Sarah's affidavit, with handwritten notes and corrections in the margins. The notes weren't in Sarah's handwriting. They were in Jessica's. Jessica had written the script. Phrases like emphasize his drinking, and mention how he isolates you from your family, were scribbled next to paragraphs. She had coached Sarah on what to say, how to frame every memory as an act of cruelty. But the most damning thing I found was a subfolder called Finances Plan. Inside was a spreadsheet. On one side was a list of all my assets. My savings, my retirement account, the equity in our house. On the other side was a plan for how Sarah could maximize her claim to it all. It included strategies for running up debt on my credit cards before the separation, and advice on how to hide her own small inheritance from her grandmother. It was a step-by-step guide to ruin me financially, and walk away with my son, and half of everything I had ever worked for. My stomach turned. This wasn't about Leo's well-being. It was a heist. A cold, calculated, emotional heist. And my son was the leverage. I printed everything. I made multiple copies, storing them in a safe deposit box, on a thumb drive I kept on my keychain. And with my lawyer, Mr. Harrison's eyes widened as he read through the documents. "Mark," he said, his voice low with a mix of shock and excitement. This is the whole case. This is a conspiracy to commit perjury and defraud the court. They've handed us the gun, the bullets, and a signed confession. But we knew we couldn't just drop this bomb in court. We had to let them walk into the trap themselves. We had to let them build their tower of lies as high as they could, so that when we pulled the foundation out, the fall would be that much greater. So we waited. I endured the supervised visits, the cold stares, the heartache of leaving my son each week. I played the part of the beaten-down man. I let my lawyer file standard, meek responses to their motions. I wanted them to get comfortable. I wanted them to think they had already won. During this time, I knew I needed more. The documents were powerful, but I wanted to show the court their current state of mind. I needed them to expose themselves in real time. So I set a simple, elegant trap. I have a cousin, Mike, who I trust with my life. He's also a bit of a social media addict and a known gossip in the family. A fact Sarah and Jessica were well aware of. I called Mike and told him my plan. He was all in. I had him post on his social media about a recent family meeting to discuss our grandfather's estate. It was all fake, of course. My grandfather is alive and well and has a very modest estate. But Mike's post was vague and suggestive. He wrote things like, "Big decisions being made. So proud of my cousin Mark for how he's handling everything. Some big changes coming his way soon." Then I had him text a mutual cousin, someone we knew would immediately run to Sarah with the news. The text said, "You won't believe it, but it looks like Mark is coming into a significant inheritance. Like life-changing money. Keep it quiet though. Things are sensitive with the divorce." We baited the hook and cast the line. Now all we had to do was wait for the sharks to bite. It took less than 24 hours. The mutual cousin called me, full of fake sympathy. "Oh Mark, I'm so sorry for what you're going through. By the way, I heard about your grandfather. If there's anything you need." I knew she was fishing for information. I played dumb and thanked her for her concern. 2 days later, my lawyer received a new motion from Sarah's lawyer. They were now demanding an immediate forensic audit of all my finances, claiming they had reason to believe I was hiding significant assets from the court. They specifically mentioned a potential inheritance. They took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. But the best part was what I found when I checked the shared cloud drive again. In their arrogance, in their belief that I was a beaten fool, they had gotten sloppy. There was a new document in the Jay's legal docs folder. It was a text conversation, screenshotted and saved. A conversation between Sarah and Jessica. "Jessica, did you hear? His cousin is blabbing about an inheritance." Sarah, "Yes, this is perfect. We can use this. We can say he was hiding it all along. This proves he's a liar." Jessica, "Exactly. Tell your lawyer to file a motion immediately. We can get a bigger settlement now. This is our ticket." Sarah, "Oh my God, Jess. You're a genius. We're finally going to be free. And we'll have the money to do it right." There it was. In black and white. Their greed, their deception, their true motives laid bare. They didn't even mention Leo. Not once. It was never about him. He was just a pawn in their greedy little game. I sat there looking at the screen, and I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt a profound, bottomless pity. For Sarah, for letting her sister's poison corrupt her so completely. But most of all for my son, who was being used as a bargaining chip by his own mother. The final court date arrived on a cold, gray morning. I walked into the courthouse feeling a strange calm. I had my truth tucked away in my lawyer's briefcase. Sarah and Jessica were already there, sitting together. They looked confident, whispering to each other and smiling smugly. Sarah shot me a look of pure contempt. She had practiced her role as the victim for so long. I think she had actually started to believe it. The hearing began. Sarah's lawyer laid out their case, painting me as a drunken, neglectful monster. Sarah took the stand and delivered a tearful, Oscar-worthy performance. She spoke of her fear, of her sleepless nights, of how she had to rescue her son from his own father. She was good. I'll give her that. She was very believable. Then Jessica took the stand as a witness. She was even better. She spoke with a calm, righteous anger, confirming every lie Sarah had told. She looked the judge right in the eye and described scenes of my supposed rage that had never happened. The judge seemed moved. I could feel the case slipping away. I glanced at Mr. Harrison. He gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. It was time. Our turn came. Mr. Harrison stood up. He didn't start by questioning their claims. He started with a simple question to Sarah, who was still on the stand. "Mrs. Miller," he began, his voice gentle. "You've testified that you left your husband because you were in fear for your safety and the well-being of your son. Is that correct?" "Yes," she said, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "I had to get him out of there. And this was a decision you made suddenly, after a particularly bad fight." "Yes. I just couldn't take it anymore." Mr. Harrison walked over to his briefcase and pulled out a single piece of paper. "I'd like to submit into evidence Plaintiff's Exhibit A. It's a credit card statement belonging to your client from 4 months ago. Could you please identify this charge for the court?" He handed it to her. Her eyes scanned the page. Her confident expression faltered. "I don't remember. Let me refresh your memory, Mr. Harrison said, his voice hardening slightly. "It's a charge for a 1-hour consultation with the very lawyer sitting next to you. A consultation that took place 2 months before you claim you reached your breaking point. Can you explain that?" Sarah stammered. Her lawyer jumped up to object, but the judge waved him down. "The witness will answer the question. I was just exploring my options," she mumbled. "Exploring your options? Or planning your exit strategy?" Mr. Harrison didn't wait for an answer. He walked back to his briefcase. "Let's talk about that strategy." For the next hour, Mr. Harrison dismantled their entire narrative, piece by piece, using their own words against them. He presented the documents from the cloud drive, the draft of her affidavit with Jessica's notes in the margin. He read Jessica's suggestions aloud. "Emphasize his drinking. Mention how he isolates you." The color drained from Jessica's face where she sat in the gallery. Sarah was shrinking on the witness stand, looking back and forth between her lawyer and her sister, a look of pure panic on her face. Then came the financial plan, the spreadsheet detailing how to strip me of my assets. The court was silent as Mr. Harrison explained what it was. The judge's expression had turned from sympathetic to stone cold. The final blow was the text messages. "Your Honor," Mr. Harrison said, "just last week, the plaintiff filed a motion accusing my client of hiding a significant inheritance. An inheritance, I might add, that does not exist. They claimed to have reason to believe this was true." He then submitted the screenshots of the text conversation between Sarah and Jessica. He read their words to the court. "This is perfect. We can use this. This is our ticket. We're finally going to be free. And we'll have the money to do it right." He let the words hang in the air. "Your Honor, this was never about the well-being of a child. This was a calculated, malicious plan to commit perjury, to manipulate this court, and to financially ruin a man for their own personal gain. They didn't just lie. They conspired. And they used a 5-year-old boy as their primary weapon." He sat down. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Sarah was openly sobbing on the stand, but these were not the crocodile tears from before. These were the panicked sobs of someone who had been caught. Jessica looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. The judge stared down at them, his face a mask of fury. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes, not out of tiredness, but out of sheer disbelief and anger. "In all my years on this bench," he said, his voice dangerously low, "I have rarely seen such a blatant and contemptible abuse of the legal process. You have lied under oath. You have fabricated evidence. You have attempted to defraud this court and the defendant. But worst of all, you have used your own child, your own son, as a pawn in a scheme born of greed and malice." He looked directly at Sarah. "The motion for sole custody is denied. Your credibility is utterly destroyed. In fact, I am reversing the temporary order. Effective immediately, sole legal and physical custody of Leo Miller is granted to his father, Mr. Mark Miller." A sound escaped my lips, a mix of a gasp and a sob. I felt Mr. Harrison's hand on my shoulder. The judge wasn't finished. He looked at Sarah. "You will be granted supervised visitation, once a week, at the discretion of a court-appointed therapist, which you will pay for. Your visitation is contingent on your full participation in individual counseling." Then his gaze shifted to Jessica. "And as for you, Miss Albright," he said, his voice like thunder, "your conduct is so far beyond the pale that I am referring this entire matter to the district attorney's office for investigation into conspiracy, perjury, and fraud. You can explain your little plans to them." Jessica let out a small squeak of terror. The gavel came down like a thunderclap. It was over. I walked out of the courthouse and took my first deep, clean breath in months. The gray sky didn't seem so oppressive anymore. That afternoon I went to pick up my son. Not from a supervised visit facility, but from his school. When he saw me standing there, his face lit up with a pure, uncomplicated joy that washed away all the darkness. He ran into my arms. "Daddy, are you taking me home?" I knelt and held him, my face buried in his shoulder. "Yeah, buddy," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I'm taking you home. For good. The road ahead won't be easy. We have a lot of healing to do. I have to help my son process the confusion and hurt caused by the two women who were supposed to love him most. The legal battles aren't completely over. The DA's office did press charges against Jessica. Sarah, stripped of her sister's influence and facing the consequences of her actions, is a shadow of her former self. Maybe one day she will be a healthy presence in Leo's life again. Maybe not. But as I tucked Leo into his own bed that night, with Rexy the dinosaur right beside him, I knew one thing for sure. They started a war based on lies, and I ended it with the truth. They tried to take everything from me, but in the end, I got back the only thing that ever truly mattered. I got my son. And in the quiet of our home, the silence was no longer empty. It was peaceful. It was ours. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt wronged or fought for something you believe in, I hope this resonated with you. It's a reminder that sometimes, the best revenge is to let people be destroyed by their own lies while you stand strong in your truth. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And if you know someone who might need to hear this, don't hesitate to share the video. Your support means the world.